Ambedkar philosophy on land taxation and land reforms. Research literature on agriculture economy of developing countries in early 20th century usually failed to reflect real ground situation because experts lacked a basic understanding of the ground situation of farmers and hereditary possession of land. They relied on published literature for drafting bills and implementing land reforms. The literature they relied on was extensively based on the agriculture system based on big land holdings prevailing in the US, Europe and the Soviet Union. Land reforms and revenue system introduced by the colonial British government were influenced by a capitalistic form of agriculture. These reforms failed to address the most pressing needs of Indian farmers. Ambedkar did an extensive survey to understand land holdings and problems of farmers. He noticed that land reforms suggested by the colonial government were influenced by the landholding system prevailed in Europe. He criticized these reforms for failing to address issues of farmers with small holdings. It may, therefore, be in order to present Ambedkar's thought on agroeconomy in his own words published under the Clause 4 of State and Minority 1947 1 that industries which are not key industries but which are basic industries shall be owned by the state and shall be run by the state or by corporations established by the state. 2. That agriculture shall be the state industry. 3. That the state shall acquire the subsisting rights in such industries, insurance and agricultural land held by private individuals, whether as owners, tenants or mortgages, and pay them compensation in the form of debenture equal to the value of his or her right in the land, provided that in reckoning the value of land, plant or security no account shall be taken of any rise therein due to emergency, of any potential or unearned value or any value for compulsory acquisition. 4. Agricultural industry shall be organized on the following basis. The state shall divide the land acquired into farm of standard size and let out the farms for cultivation to residents of the village as tenants made up of group of families to cultivate on the following conditions. The farm shall be cultivated as a collective farm. The farm shall be cultivated in accordance with rules and directions issued by government. The tenants shall share among themselves in the manner prescribed the produce of the farm left after the payment of charges properly leviable on the farm. B. The land shall be let out to villagers without distinction of caste or creed and in such manner that there will be no landlord, no tenant and no landless laborers. C. It shall be the obligation of the state to finance the cultivation of the collective farms by the supply of water, draft animals, implements, manure, seeds, etc. D. The state will be entitled to levy the following charges on the produce of the farm. A portion for land revenue. B. A portion to pay the debenture holders. And C. A portion to pay for the use of capital goods supplied. And 2. To prescribe penalties against tenants who break the conditions of tenancy or willfully neglect to make the best use of the means of cultivation offered by the state or otherwise act prejudicially to the scheme of collective farming. 5. The scheme shall be brought into operation as early as possible, but in no case shall the period extend beyond the 10th years from the date of the Constitution coming into operation. Ambedkar dealt with agrarian reforms on many occasions. His views on agrarian reform can be classified into the following facets: A. Landless laborers. B. Land revenue. C. Land reform. D. Cooperative farming. E. Nationalization of land. A. Landless laborers. Agricultural laborers are the backbone of Indian agriculture. Most of them are living below poverty line due to lack of purchasing power. The prevailing wage rate is hardly sufficient for them to meet their basic needs. They are at the mercy of landlords in villages. Ambedkar demanded the enforcement of a minimum standard wages for agricultural laborers. Ambedkar advocated that urgent problem of landless laborers must be solved by taking over the uncultivated lands for cultivation and giving them to landless laborers. In the case of landless laborers, land hunger was dominant. His desire was that landless laborers should be treated on par with the other laborers. According to him, similar conditions of work, provident funds, employers' liability, workmen's compensation, health insurance and pension should be open to all sort of labor, whether it is industrial or agricultural labor. B. Land revenue. Ambedkar supported tax on agriculture and insisted that every farmer, whatever may be his income, should be brought under the levy of the land tax. The rate of land revenue must not be fixed, but should be kept elastic and subject to variation, as in the case of income tax applicable to the salaried class, merchants and industries. These classes were given relaxation in income tax in case of drop of income below income tax limit fixed by the government. Such a taxation system did not exist for land revenue in India in colonial period. There was no rationale in collecting proportional land tax from all the farmers irrespective of the size of their holdings. Land revenue rates were same whether a farmer owned less than 1 acre land, or a jagirdar or an inamdar owned 1,000 acres land. The poor agriculturist was forced to pay revenue even when his crops failed. Considering the poor state of small farmers, Dr. Ambedkar advocated that land revenue should be levied on the recognized principle of ability to pay. Land revenue should be progressive, and tax should be graded, with those with large agricultural incomes paying higher revenue. He insisted that those farmers whose incomes were below a certain level must be exempted from payment of land tax. He further argued that the ultimate object of taxation system on agriculture is to cease taxing on uneconomic holdings. Most of Indian farmers at that time were either landless labor and owning small agricultural land. Dr. Ambedkar also made demand for remittance of all arrears of rent as the revenue arrears were remitted. See land reform through expropriation of actual cultivators. A considerable portion of lands had passed into the hands of non-cultivating, rent-receiving, absentee landlords. Ambedkar advocated treating agriculture as industry. According to him, land reforms were necessary to increase agricultural production. He emphasized input-output relations as a new idea in land reforms. To increase agricultural output, land reforms act as a method to create economic holdings. Ambedkar laid a great stress on the modernization and industrialization of rural economy as a step toward securing redeployment of the labor force so as to reduce the pressure of supporting family entirely on agriculture. He stressed that prosperity of India lies in synchronized development of agriculture and industry in the rural India. The surplus land available because of land ceiling implementation should be distributed amongst the weaker sections of society. Cooperative farming to avoid the evils of small holdings. Ambedkar demanded cooperative farming in India. He said the better method is to introduce cooperative agriculture for standard areas and to compel owners of small strips included therein to join in cultivation without destroying private ownership. Pages 131. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Writings and Speeches, Vol. 2. He further said, separate provision for consolidation would be unnecessary. A cooperative farm would be both a large and a consolidated holding. Pages 134. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Writings and Speeches, Vol. 2. As a social reformer, Ambedkar visualized that the cooperative system would be the best system in India, in which there would be no landlord, no tenant and no landless laborers. Nationalization of land. As far as the land ownership was concerned, Dr. Ambedkar was of the opinion that the state should own the land, but not the individual. The nationalization of land would be able to resolve most of evils due to small holding and landless labor. Ambedkar thought that India can achieve impressive growth in agriculture sector through industrialization of agricultural sector, which is possible only with nationalization of land. While referring to nationalization of land system, Dr. Ambedkar expressed likeness for land system prevailed in Soviet. Ambedkar's philosophy on small holdings owning land is considered a status symbol in India. Agricultural holdings in India are dominated by small holdings. Land distribution patterns show that there is an unequal distribution of land holdings, and a vast area of land is in the hands of upper caste Hindus and other higher castes in India. Various land reform legislations have been conceived and implemented by state governments to achieve a fair and rationalized distribution of land holdings. But these legislations have not altered the agrarian structure sufficiently. Ambedkar studied the problems of small holdings in India and suggested remedies which are quite relevant even today. His views on land holding were published in a paper titled Small Holdings in India and Their Remedies, published in September 1918 by Journal of the Indian Economic Society. Vol. 1. In the said paper he pointed out that the average size of holdings varies from 25.9 acres in the Bombay Presidency to an acre or two in Pimpli-Sadagar, near Pune. Again, these small holdings were greatly fragmented. For instance, in Ratnagiri district, a holding of 20 gunthas was fragmented into 3 plots 40 gunthas 1 acre. In Thane district, a holding of 1 acre and 9 gunthas consisted of 6 plots. In Surat district, a holding of an acre consisted as many as 14 plots. Ambedkar conclusively proved with sufficient data that Indian agriculture suffers from small holdings, each holding being highly fragmented. He also proved that small and scattered holdings were mainly responsible for low agricultural productivity. Evils due to small holdings are many. The cause for small holdings was excessive subdivision and fragmentation, which according to him has to be curbed by consolidation of holdings for raising productivities in agriculture. The fragmentation of holdings renders farming considerably inefficient. Consolidation of holdings has been designed to reverse fragmentation of land holdings. According to Ambedkar, voluntary exchanges can hardly be relied upon for much. But a restricted sale of right of occupancy may be expected to go a good deal. For, under it, when survey numbers are put to auction on account of their being relinquished by the holders or taken in attachment for arrears of assessments, only those may be allowed to bid in the auction for the sale of right of occupancy whose lands are contagious to the land hammered out. Pages 459, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Writings and Speeches, Vol. 1. According to him, compulsory restriping has to be done on 2 principles: economic unit, original ownership. He wanted consolidation of scattered parcels of land. He does not agree that the small farms are uneconomic. Economic and uneconomic does not necessarily depend upon the size of farm. It depends on other factors of production as well. It varies with labor and also varies with capital. He also said it must be borne in mind that consolidation may obviate the evils of scattered holdings, but it will not obviate the evils of small holdings unless the consolidated holding is an economic, that is an enlarged holding. Pages 464, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Writings and Speeches, Vol. 1. He further added, I am inclined to think that under the present circumstances it is better to further reduce the farms. I do not therefore understand what is the use of enlarging the farms. If, for instance, farmer has not got the wherewithal to cultivate the land. Pages 130, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Writings and Speeches, Vol. 2. He wanted to consolidate the scattered parcels in the holdings, but at the same time the landless also should get land to eke out their livelihood. Ambedkar viewed agriculture as industry and attempted to analyze the impact of small holdings on agriculture. To him, the existences of holdings are uneconomic, not however, in the sense that they are too small but that they are too large. Pages 472, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Writings and Speeches, Vol. 1. It is important to note that a study conducted by Thangarai titled Land Use Pattern in Tamil Nadu, MID's Working Paper No. 107, 1992 by size of holdings shows that the large farmers leave proportionately more land uncultivated than the small holdings. This indicates that there is a need for reduction of ceiling on land holdings. Dr. Ambedkar linked consolidation of land holding with economy, agriculture productivity and well-being of farmers. Consequently, the remedy for the ills of agriculture in India did not lie primarily in the matter of enlarging holdings, but in the matter of increasing capital and capital goods. He attacked the generally accepted concept of an economic holding, which states that a holding can be economical only when it allows a man a chance of producing sufficient to keep himself and his family in reasonable comfort after paying his necessary expenses. According to Ambedkar, the concept of economic holding should be understood not only from the consumption point of view, but also from the production point of view. This is the correct view and applies even today to the situation in India, because to increase production, money and real capital and capital goods are essential. His further view was that if agriculture is to be treated as economic enterprise, size has not much significance. A holding be small or large depending upon the availability and use of other factors at his disposal. Size holdings is neutral in economic sense, and hence the view that a large holding is economic and a small holding is uneconomic is not correct, because the right or wrong proportion of other factors of production used along with land makes the latter as economic or uneconomic holding.